very good morning, a baie goeie môre, and a heartily Molweni, South Africa. Today, I hope that this country, reeling in the situations that we are, and standing together in all the challenges that South Africa has faced in the past couple of years, the COVID scenario, the reduction of the economy, the worklessness, the loss of jobs, the implosion of our economy, and without a doubt, South Africa, the absolute rudderless management of our state has brought us today where the UIM will deliver today its first ever reflection on the real Sona, the real state of the nation of the Republic of South Africa. Baie goeiemôre met hierdie eerste UIM ware Sona, waar ek met u gaan praat vandag as die president van die UIM, oor regtig hoe die feite staan in ons land, en na 'n week se werk of 2, saam met my span, om vir u die waarheid te vertel waar ons is. Molweni Mzansi nomhlanje apha yindaba ithetha isona ayimzansi apha i-truth nomhlanje. I will be doing this speech today in English so that every certain and every clear denomination in this country can understand where we really are. Last night, the number one citizen of this country, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Matamata Ramaphosa, delivered his State of the Nation. It was very clear from the outset that this uninspiring, very flatly delivered, full of suggestive promises speech was going to yield to this country no inspiration, no new news, and without a doubt, absolutely no solutions to the current state of affairs in our beloved Republic of South Africa. What was more disappointing was the fact that the after discussions from political parties were not harsh, were not critical, and definitely not solutions-based, but again a group of people that sat in a hall, all dollied up, showing their leather shoes, their Armani bags, their beautiful Apple telephones, their stunning black X7s and Q8s and BMWs, and afterwards just sat there and said that they all agree that the president didn't deliver hope. This South Africa does not take us any further. A country needs leadership. A country does not need an opponent to sit and criticize, but it needs a leader to get up and take decisive, clear decisions. We believe that the UIM is that leadership. And today I will deliver my State of the Nation address and deliver it to the President in reflection of what he said last night. I ask you to bear with me. No matter the time, I will keep it as short and brief as possible. Number one, last night was in actual fact not an auspicious occasion, but indeed one of sadness. And the reason for that is that for the first time since 1994, Parliament was forced to move location to a city hall. Now, although the city of Cape Town can receive every accolade, including the mayor, Mr. Gordon Hill-Lewis, for ensuring that Parliament at least had a home, our home is Parliament. It is the people's Parliament and has been so since the outset of democracy and even prior to that. How sad that we have to sit in a town hall when our most auspicious building representing state, representing the people, had to stand there in tatters and burnt nearly to the ground. What is clear is there's no plan at this moment to even revive this huge icon called the People's Parliament. All that he said, someone was arrested, which still we wait for that proof. And secondly, that the building was not insured, and it will cost again this figure called $1 billion. So no matter the pumping ceremony, the flashing blue lights, the massive cars, the pomp and ceremony of music and byflies of the Air Force, it is still a sad day that we could not hold our opening in our own parliament. Number one, when Cyril started to speak, the words that were coming from him were promises, more committees, more bids and more tenders, more investigations, new units, projects and products, master plans, and everything ended with to be done, to be discussed. Words like new mechanisms, new theories, new committees were all ended with a new word which the president has now found in his vocabulary: consensus. He said we have reached a consensus. And after all those words of bids and tenders and investigations and units and all of that, I'm sorry, Mr. President, the only consensus that I can reach with my fellow citizens is there is no plan of current. It was very clear that he did not even mention the sporadic NDP, National Development Plan 2030. It was not mentioned once. Mr. President, what happened to this auspicious NDP 2030? The so-called hope of a SA plan for survival. Mr. President, what was very lacking was nowhere in your speech last night did you reflect on your promises made in the 2021 Sona, and did you tell us hard facts of what you achieved between 2021 and 2022. Mr. President, you reported yesterday to the nation. The state of the nation means tell us what you've done, tell us what you've achieved, tell us how you did it, and then tell us what you are planning for 2022. Mr. President, you mentioned zero of anything you've done. We then got a reflection of this so-called anti-corruption attitude and clearly saw the sterling picture of our acting Chief Justice, Judge Zondo, who currently ran the Zondo Commission. Mr. President, let me tell you that the Zondo Commission cost just over 1.2 billion rand. It is now completed. You've had 2 volumes of Judge Zondo's report, and clearly 0 arrests by NPA. Until, Mr. President, we do not see shackles, handcuffs, and prosecutions of the top politicians that are mentioned in these public reports, I am sorry, but the nation will give you a 0 out of 10 on squashing and curbing so-called state capture and corruption. I will give it to you that yesterday you blatantly admitted that there was a clear capture of state. These are your words. And then you mentioned the fact that you have now realized that there has been, in your words, I quote verbatim, a criminal network that infiltrated government and stole our money. Well, Mr. President, that criminal network is the ANC. Because the majority of people that caused state capture are members of the African National Congress. And if not, were clearly linked and associated to members of the African National Congress. Mr. President, you also said that you and your cabinet, in the new report reflecting on the June-July absolute disgrace of looting last year, that you take responsibility on the failure to protect our citizens, state security, and our country. This was an admittance that I will give you credit to, but you go back to zero if you do not fire and ask those ministers in cabinet that caused this absolute mayhem, loss of life, more than 300, billions of rands in business, and who knows how many foreign direct investors cancelled their investments not to support this economy. Well, Mr. President, you need to ask those people to fall on the sword and resign. What you did not tell the people is the following factual amounts of monies that have been picked up in the past 2 years just out of our fiscus. Health. Between 2006 and 2010 in this country, more than R1 billion was stolen out of the Department of Health. The Zondo Commission have found out that over the period of 4 years pre-2019, listen to this, an amount of 1.5 trillion rand was stolen. Mr. President, the annual budget of the Republic of South Africa is 1.37 trillion. I will say this again to the citizens of this country. The Zondo Commission has found that over 4 years, people in this country stole the equivalent of our country's annual budget, 1.5 trillion. We found that state capture cost us another billion. We found that Eskom paid the Gupta family 659 million. That is, again, $500 million. We found that Transnet paid the Gupta family 5.3 billion. We found that the Zondo Commission cost this country 1.2 billion. Mr. President, calculate all of that, and we are nearly at 2 trillion rand. 1.5 times the fiscal budget to run this country. That is the true Sona. That is the true reflection of where this country's fiscus and where our tax money in the Republic of South Africa is dwelling in the pockets of the fat cats and the hyenas and in the sluthering drains of those criminals' pockets. Mr. President, are you going to arrest them? Are you going to personally lead the NPA to get these investigations done? Because, Mr. President, you need no more investigations. Zondo cost 1.2 billion to investigate. The problem that we have, Mr. President, is that, and I quote you last night, criminal network is so deeply entrenched, it will take years and years to get them out of our systemic evolution now of corruption and fraud. For that, Mr. President, you need leadership. For that, Mr. President, you need zero tolerance, and we want ministers in cuffs that stole and were part of this criminal network. And only until then can we believe as the citizens of this republic that you are serious about curbing corruption. Mr. President, you mentioned a couple of things last night, but you left out a hell of a lot. The things you mentioned last night was that you will now continue to pay a stipend and grant to 10 million people of this country that you have been paying, and you have decided to continue for another year and extend this poverty grant, in my opinion. The money that you promised is 350 rand, which is below poverty, but at least something, but for 10 million people. Mr. President, although the UIM will never ever want to see people in this country starve, want to see people in this country suffer, and will never want to see a country that is under the breadline. But Mr. President, my question, now that we have seen that more than 2 trillion has left the fiscus, the amount of money you will have to now find through Treasury or make another international loan is going to cost the people of this country 42 billion rand. Meneer die president, dis nog 42 biljoen rand wat die belastingbetalers moet betaal. Where are we going to get this money? Mr. President, you didn't tell us about Eskom. All that you told us is your beautiful plans to create 4,000 more megawatts. Mr. President, this country is in the dark, not only by light, not only by electricity, but by leadership. Mr. President, why don't you make South Africa first? Mr. President, why don't you put South Africa first? Why do you not cut the neighboring nation's supply of electricity from our Eskom and give that power back to our people? Because, Mr. President, your people are currently in the dark. If I was president, the first thing I would do is write a letter to Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Botswana, Mozambique, and tell these people, I am sorry, but your supply of electricity will hereby be reduced because my citizens want electricity first. But you don't have the guts. And unfortunately, a president must have guts. Mr. President, what you did not also tell us is that one of our biggest losses in this country in Eskom was the Medupi power plant. And what you haven't told us is that it's going to cost another 1 billion rand to fix Medupi, even after the loss of absolutely quantums of billions already. Again, Mr. President, you promised more power stations, but you didn't tell us that we could privatize power. Mr. President, the solution of the UIM is privatize power. Open up the PPA, the private power purchase agreements. Let South African entrepreneurs build solar, build plants that can be hydro, build wind farms, and sell that power back to the grid. When you do that and you take Eskom out as a SOE, you will not only create jobs, stimulate the economy, but give power back, sorry for the pun, to the people. Can't you get it? Mr. President, another cost that you did not mention was Parliament, costing $1 billion because you did not ensure Parliament. Now, can you imagine leadership that cannot even ensure a state institution? No, Mr. President, failure. What you did not tell us is that at current moment, 3/4 of the harbours under Portnet are falling apart. What you did not tell us is that in many cases, railroads don't exist anymore because they stole the steel and the railway tracks. Mr. President, what you did not tell us is the cost to company and the total digression of our railway system. All that you told us is you are fixing it. Mr. President, what you did not tell us is that we have hardly a road infrastructure without potholes. Mr. President, SANRAL did not tell us how they will now fix roads. The only thing you could tell us is that you are going to build 694 kilometers of rural roads. Rural roads, and you are not going to even replace the roads we lost already. Mr. President, and finally, you did not tell us that we have totally lost Denel. The once proud Denel that went out in the world and created some of the best manufactured armaments in the world, the G5 cannon, the G6 mobile cannon, the Ratel, the Nordica. You have not even come back and told us how Denel was sold to the world by the Guptas. Mr. President, on carte blanche, we saw how missile components that were a South African owned was stripped and sold to the Middle East. No arrests. Mr. President, what you did not tell us is that you sold SAA and that all that money, the billions and billions of rands, that we, the citizens of this country, paid to keep that absolute white elephant in the air, has now been lost. Mr. President, what you did not tell us is how you will cut fuel. You see, Mr. President, what you haven't told us is how will you put money back in my pocket as a taxpayer. At 20 rand on average for a litre of petrol, you will cause the implosion of a further sector of your citizens. And my question is, wat maak jy met Sasol? See, Mr. President, we pay for Sasol and Mosgas. So my theory is if I was the president of this republic, bugger competitiveness, give the people at a Sasol petrol tank a grant. Because if we pay for Sasol petrol as state and as taxpayers, then I want to go into a Sasol garage and get a 5 or 10% reduction on my petrol. Want ek betaal, ek soek iets terug. Mr. President, we funded SAA and you didn't even give South African ID and passport carriers discount on SAA flights. Don't you think that would be incentivization? No, Mr. President. It's just about stealing, looting, and the so-called criminal network. Mr. President, last night, you made a statement that was so wrong. You said in a glorious manner that you will be adding 13,000 police officers to SAPS. Mr. President, you are wrong, and I beg you to go find out from your incompetent Minister of Police, who last night decided on all television channels to pass the buck and throw the National Commissioner Sitole under the bus. You see, Mr. President, when you are a minister, No, a leader. You take responsibility, and if you failed, you accept that failure, and if necessary, you resign. This is not coming from the police. Mr. President, what actually you are doing by putting 13,000 more police is you are just replacing the ones you did not add for the past 2 years. Meneer die president, kom ek en jy praat gou reguit met mekaar. Man tot man, oog tot oog. We, the citizens of this country, will no longer be lied to. We won't be lied to because it's all on record. My opinion is just that no one in the political realm of this country has the sheer guts to get up and challenge the system. There is no opposition in this country anymore. Well, there is now. It's called Neil de Beer and the United Independent Movement. We will keep you publicly accountable. Mr. President, instead of 13,000 police, to get 13,000 extra police, you need 26,000 police officers. 13,000 to replace the 2020 and 2021 non-compliance of full support, and then an extra 13. Jy sien, ons kan tel. And we do it well. Mr. President, yesterday you said you will build a further 697 kilometers of rural roads on a guesstimated amount of more than 1.5 million rand per kilometer for a tar road. This is a further 1 billion rand. May I suggest, Mr. President, that instead of building, with respect, 690 kilometers of rural tar roads, why don't you take the billion and go fix the current ones that are dying? You see, Mr. President, those roads that now have potholes as big as dams are in actual fact the roads commercially for the citizens that we use today. If you want to go get a real snapshot of how this country looks like for a change, go to Lady Brandt in the Free State, and then you go find me a road that the people can say is perfect. My suggestion, Mr. President, fix what you've got and then plan to build what you don't have. You also say you are going to build 95 more bridges because of sporadic flooding. That cost will also be more than $1 billion over 4 to 5 years. This word $1 billion is starting to sound like nothing to you, Mr. President. But R1 billion is a lot of money. There is no government project. There is no state-funded initiatives. They are people's projects because we pay for it. I'll say this again, daar's geen staatsprojekte nie. Daar's geen staatsontwikkeling nie. Dit is mense van Suid-Afrika se geld. Dit is dus die mense se projekte. Moenie daar staan en krediet vat nie. Sê dankie vir jou belastingbetaler. Now, Mr. President, not once in your 2-hour discussion last night did you thank the taxpayers of this country for paying your backside. I think that is rude. In conclusion, your last statement last night about creating 50,000 jobs in the youth, employing a further 100,000. Mr. President, we went back to your Sona address since 2019. You're not doing well. Why the hell must we believe you that you will do it in 2022? Show us, Mr. President, like you said previously, Tuma Mina, send me. Well, Mr. President, maybe you should add Tumamina P, which means send me where. The citizens of this country does not stand back. We are not a lazy nation. But if you want us to work together, then Mr. President, lead by bloody example. Get into the trenches and lead. Otherwise, make way, and we will do so. Now, Mr. President, unfortunately, these are the things you did not mention last night. Mr. President, you gave a zero account to pensioners. Mr. President, the pensioners of this country are the people that carried on their backs, no matter black or white, they carried this country for the past 60 to 70 years. Mr. President, you failed our senior citizens dismally last night. How can you sit there, Mr. President, a pensioner actually yourself, a man over 60, and you cannot get it over your lips to say to the pensioners of this country that you will add to their money another 20 or 25% escalation. But you can find 350 rand for those that are unemployed because of the conditions that you as a country actually annihilated and we could not get work done. You are rewarding the unemployed, but our pensioners and the citizens of this country that have stood through the most terrible times, now in the twilight cannot even survive. Mr. President, you gave the citizens, the senior pensioners of this country, no hope, and you gave them zero tolerance from your side. It is disgusting, it is saddening, it is an indictment on the human rights of our senior citizens of this country. Now, Mr. President, if I was the president, in actual fact, I would find the fiscus to give every single senior citizen on their pension a 50% raise on the current pittance that they are getting. And how would I find the money? It's easy. Stop stealing 2 trillion rand. The citizens of this country deserve more. And those that reach that silver age, that sit in the twilight of their lives, should be given more respect by you and your government whom you already declared failed. Mr. President, zero on military veterans. The people in this country that fought, no matter what side. And I want to address this tonight as the president of the UIM, what you said. But more than that, what you didn't. It is time that all military veterans in this country get recognized. It is time that the pre-94 military defense force and the post that these military veterans put aside the division and unite. But you gave the military veterans of this country no respect, no dignity, and not even a mention of how you will fix their lives when they gave their lives for the survival and the democracy of this country. Well, Mr. President, the reason why no man in uniform that is currently retired was not mentioned last night is because you are not one. Mr. President, you were a unionist. I doubt if you ever went to war. So my leadership of the UIM, I declare today on my state of the nation, is that the UIM will fight now for the rights, the survival, and the dignity and recognition of all members, pre and post, that served in uniform in this country. I am therefore launching the United Military Veterans Association of South Africa, and I will be giving you feedback in my time, without a doubt. It is time that no matter which side of the divide you fought, that you get that united support from government. The United Military Veterans of South Africa will be all members that served in uniform. That is respect, but you did not give that to them last night. Mr. President, how do you think you are going to put rand and cents back in the pockets of the citizens of this country? You did not tell us. The things that matter, Mr. President, not to you, because you get paid now by government, jy bly in tuinhuis, and you stay in a beautiful home in Pretoria. You see, bread and milk, water, electricity, and the fundamentals don't count for you because I pay for it. And 3 million other citizens out of 60 million carry your backside. See, Mr. President, milk costs money. Water pays money. So therefore, Mr. President, last night you spoke nothing about reducing the cost of electricity to our people. Not even a grant, not a stipend, not a national declaration of hope that you will cut the cost of electricity to the poorest of the poor. Mr. President, you did not tell us how you will put water back in the taps, even in a place like Welkom, Matsabeng, and Henneman. You see, Mr. President, you can't give us currently a reduction on the most fundamental basic right called water, because in many of our cities, we have no water at the moment. But you go promise us about a new technology, a new matter of a new scenario, a new equipment that will currently sanitize and even make better drinking water. Meneer die president, daar's nie bloody water in Henneman nie. Why don't you bloody fix that first? Mr. President, you made a statement last night, and now this is the sensitive part. Mr. President, when are you going to stop playing the black and white card? Mr. President, when are you going to lead in the fashion of Nelson, Rolihlahla, Mandela, Madiba? Where we will face in this country a non-racial, non-toxic, non-prejudiced nation. When will you do that? Mr. President, last night you spoke in such great terminology of subsistence farmers. You spoke of how much land you are going to transfer, more than 14,000 or 14 million hectares, Mr. President, and you then said that a new grant and stipend will be going out for black farmers in this country. Now, hear me well, Mr. President. We find nothing wrong with trying to readdress what we call the unbalanced. Maar vragtig, this is 30 years now. Mr. President, subsistence farmers do not feed this nation. Commercial farmers do. And yes, unfortunately, up till now, the majority of those commercial farmers that feed us are white. Mr. President, I cannot wait for the day that farmers will not be murdered. I cannot wait for the day that you realize that food is at stake. Mr. President, I pray for the day that you won't deny that there is a genocide on farmers. I pray for that day that you can stop calling farmers black and white. Mr. President, if you don't want to give grants to our farmers, we are going to starve. Because milk does not come from Woolworths. It comes from a cow that is fed, funded and nurtured by a farmer. You said therefore last night that white farmers won't get that grant. I find that sad, and I also find that dangerous, because food, water are the major stabilities of a nation. Mr. President, I'm asking you, look after our farmers, not racial divide. Mr. President, you mentioned nothing of the hospitals. Mr. President, you mentioned absolutely nothing about your national health system. Mr. President, you mentioned zero about hospitals, about nurses, about the standard of doctors. Mr. President, you mentioned zero about new hospitals that you did build. Mr. President, why? Because surely a national health system, Mr. President, surely the people that cannot afford their medical aids need to use public hospitals. And Mr. President, have you visited them? But again, last night, you mentioned nothing of our health system. Mr. President, you mentioned that you will be spending money now internally on major bulk infrastructural plans and, as you call it, projects. What you said was you are planning, but you didn't report to this country of how many. You didn't mention what you have done, and that I expected from the state of the nation, why you were on bloody TV. But instead of that, Mr. President, what you spoke about is your genuine leather shoes and your Foschini suit. I give you kudos that you are trying to prove that you are buying local and that you are using an Afrikaans terminology, local is lekker. But what you're not telling us at this current moment is how much and what you have done for all the businesses of the SMMEs in this country. Mr. President, how much money have you spent in 2021 on small and medium enterprise businesses? Again, you only mentioned projects, products, and master plans. You see, Mr. President, last night, you were so happy to declare that something that they call Zol or Dacha is now going to be legalized so that hemp and cannabis industry is now going to flourish. You see, Mr. President, last night, there were only three things that mattered. Your Foschini suit, your Dacha incrimination, now being legalized and moved to industry. And thirdly, you said that we are now going to be able to see clearly our television screens. Meneer die president, wat die hel, het 'n digital en analog TV te doen met amper 20 miljoen mense wat nie bloody werk het nie. So my submission is that you are probably worried that the 20 million people that are not employed can see their TV clearly now. A Sona on cannabis, television, and Foschini. Mr. President, it doesn't work that way. What works is if you give the citizens hope, and you gave none last night. Mr. President, how much money did you spend in the couple of 3 years, except for the money that has been stolen, to businesses to survive? Mr. President, the question I'd like to ask is, as a business owner myself, you extended the 350 rand for the poor. Did you extend the business rescue help from government for those businesses that are dying and have died? You see, that's how you create employment, Mr. President, by funding, supporting, and stimulating the businesses of this country. We now agree that more than a third of this country should census show that we have 60 million citizens. It is very clear that from now on 20 million people on average is not employed. Dames en here, 1/3 van hierdie land het nie werk nie. That was not mentioned last night. Now, Mr. President, in my final part of my Sona, the United Independent Movement does not just keep you accountable in 3 metros. As the 24th largest party now, out of 325, we are rising, Mr. President. The UIM is coming. We are on our way. Now, Mr. President, after these facts that I gave you, here are the UIM solutions to a couple. It doesn't help that you sit and criticize from the stadium and you are not a player on the field. What is very important is the following. Here it is. Foreign direct investment in this country must become the most important focus point ever. Without foreign dollars and pounds and euros, we will not be able to stimulate and grow this country's economy. Mr. President, you need to go back and tell the world that we've made mistakes. Like you said, take responsibility as cabinet and get the people of the world to reinvest in this country. The UIM under its leadership would not spend less than 3 months overseas promoting our republic. The UIM would get on aircraft our own, paid by ourselves, fueled by ourselves, and get into countries and tell them why South Africa is still the best investment in the continent of Africa. Mr. President, we are no longer that. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya have taken over those positions on this continent. And why? Because under the ANC management, you have let us slip under the top 5. We are not investable anymore. They call this country's economy junk. Mr. President, the people of the Republic of South Africa will never be degraded as junk. We, the people of this country, are not junk. The leadership is junk. Not our people, not our citizens, and not the beauty of this land will ever be junk. You are making us feel junk. Mr. President, get in that seat and go blow the world away with what you can put on the table. And if you cannot, because it seems so, I am available. The UIM is available. And that's my promise. Under UIM leadership, we will restore the dignity of this national brand called South Africa. That's important. Jy moet ruggraat kry om hierdie land te lei en ons terug te sit van waar ons gekom het. Mr. President, foreign direct investment, now you talk about red tape. Why now? Why only now are you appointing a businessman in your office to so-called cut red tape? I thought we are already at red carpet. That's the slogan, Mr. President, and you cannot take it from me. No more red tape, absolutely more red carpet to this country. Gebruik het maar, Soekie, it's for you. Mr. President, why don't you employ 100 people in every province? Mr. President, why don't you go and recruit 100 people in every province in this country, in the capital of each province, and call them the Mr. Fix-It team? Because that's what I would do, Mr. President. Instead of letting people sit at home and paying them for doing nothing, why don't you go and recruit 100 people in every capital city, pay them an amount of money, and let them start fixing the potholes? You see, Mr. President, that would be 900 people. At the cost, yes, we agree, to this country at $1 million. But, Mr. President, we can't find 2 trillion. So even at the cost of R1 million a day in this country to employ 900 people, Even if we then pay them 5 million rand a week, and even if that cost is 20 million a month, and you take that cost for 20 million a month, Mr. President, you're employing 900 people that are fixing our bloody potholes. Maybe that, Mr. President, is how you will bring back the beauty of the city of roses, Mangaung. Maybe that is how you will replace in Welkom the dignity. Maybe, Mr. President, when you go to Lady Brandt, they can start asphalting and tarring the roads that washed away. Maybe, Mr. President, 900 people working 5 days a week can start restoring dignity. And that at a cost of 20 million a month? I think, Mr. President, the people want to work. They don't want to sit on their backsides. That's our solution to Mr. Fix-It. Mr. President, we already told you, privatize electricity. Mr. President, we already told you, give tax incentives to businesses to more employ. If you tell a company that he can get certain tax breaks, if he employs more people, you will get more stimulus of the people wanting to employ more people. But you've got to give us incentives. Mr. President, sell the SOEs. It's time to cut the umbilical cord and move on. You said last night government does not and cannot be the main bearer of business. Well, then create a way that we can do more business by taking away the bloody red tape and giving South Africans the incentive to employ, work, and create more jobs. You see, Mr. President, out of the 400 people that sit in your parliament but in a town hall, I would say the majority have never ever owned a spaza shop, like us. Mr. President, there are people that are retired, but that sit with intellectual property and expertise you cannot imagine. The UIM would go back to our people, our senior citizens, and employ them. The UIM would go find the retired warrant officers, the retired police officers, the retired doctors, the retired lawyers, the retired accountants, and put them back into academies to mentor the future. You see, Mr. President, instead of just giving pensioners a hike in their money, why don't you give them their dignity? They worked 60 bloody years and they know what they're doing. But what we did in this country is we suddenly tried to bring in something, Mr. President, that you didn't speak of. BEE. Cyril, it's time to stop BEE. Let's call it quits. Neri President, stop BEE. We need NEE. So my program is nee vir B. The UIM will immediately cancel BEE and bring in a new program called National Economic Empowerment, where black and white and Indian colored all get treated as national citizens so that they can be empowered. The time to move BEE out has come. Mr. President, you have TVET colleges in this country running out of your ears and you don't know what to do with it. It is our opinion at the UIM that you must immediately go and bring in skills development to create more artisans in this country. You see, artisans being plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, those are the people that are the heart and soul of this country. Your mechanics, your technicians, these are the people that fix the country. Mr. President, this country must get back to skills development and no later than today. We are failing the country by not doing skills development. Mr. President, I'm nearly done in South Africa, but Mr. President, we demand that the school pass rate must go back to 50%. Mr. President, the rumor of a 30% pass rate now at public school level is killing the brain and the growth of our intellect in this country. How do you create a country that must compete globally when the schools only have to pass at 30%? You see, Mr. President, by giving them a 30% pass rate, you are killing us at university. And this is my question: how the hell must we compete against Germany? We therefore ask that the pass rate and grading of the school system must happen today, and we need to get back on par. Putting kids through school by actually degrading their intellectual capacity is not killing the people, it's killing the country. We ask for mentorship in industry. Mr. President, it's not about BEE and replacing white people with black people. It is about making sure that every single person in this country gets a job, but is mentored to do that job. It doesn't help you take people out and replace them with race. You should be replacing them with expertise and a future. Lastly, Mr. President, we don't care for any of the problems that we've got if we have a leader. Mr. President, you asked last night this country must unite, look over the divide, and join hands. We will not join hands with a corrupt government. We will not support leadership that have not taken responsibility, and we will not follow a leader that has no basic plan. Your promises, the way that you said to us you would do so much, has not helped and stimulated this country, Mr. President, to look forward to a healthy 2022. Mr. President, this country will follow. This country will unite, but we will only do so if you put God back. We will only do so if you bring Christ back into our schools, Christ back into our government, and bring religion and Christ back into our parliament. Because without the foundations of guidance of religion, there can be no future in any nation. I will end off by saying that the UIM stand for the 5 principles which we want to implement in government. 1, fight crime with zero tolerance. 2, lock up those people that have been corrupt and are corrupt. Mr. President, it's time that lifestyle audits to all government employees become mandatory in their contract of employment, and that every person serving in state must submit to every quarter of a year of a lifestyle audit. If they do so, you will be able to bring confidence back to we, the people that pay them. Number 3, Mr. President, defend the Constitution. Your opening statement last night was, we have a beautiful Constitution. Well, Mr. President, that's like saying that you've got a beautiful swimming pool, but you don't have a bloody creepy crawly to clean it. Let's clean this pool. Let's suck out the gump, and let's replace this pool of South Africa with clean, clear water. And by the way, start putting water back into our taps, because that's the only way we're going to fill the pool through our hosepipe. Finally, Mr. President, you've got to start caring about all your citizens, not just those that you want to get the vote from. I want to thank everybody that spent this hour and more with me. I want to thank you for giving me your time on a Friday. But this speech gave you more insight about the real state of the nation. This speech on record has been calculated to bring hope and to tell you, the citizens of this country, that someone is fighting. We might be a small political party, that came out of a person who served for so long a government that I had hoped and now recognized has failed. We became a movement that became a party that now in Cape Town, Johannesburg and Durban, Ekurhuleni are in government. You see what we are doing in the small capacity. Can you imagine the UIM in national government in 2024? We will never stand back. We will never surrender. We will fight for the Republic of South Africa. Remember the oath that we took, the day that you were born in this beautiful country, the time that you rose up and saw a World Cup being won, a free president that said we are a rainbow nation, a country with dignity, a country with respect. May we rise today amongst all challenges and put a smile back on every person that calls Mzansi, South Africa, our home. To all our people that are in countries outside South Africa, may God bless you, and may you know that you will always remain our citizens of the world. We cannot wait to welcome you back, because we that are in this country are fighting so that you can stand in a foreign country and be proud of this nation. South Africa, let's bring our nation back to where it belongs. Aluta continua, die stryd gaan aan. May God bless you. Mag die Here julle seën. And remember, South Africa, SA first, Suid-Afrika eerste. Mag God bly nommer 1. May you have a blessed weekend. Godspeed. Siyabulela. Inkosi. Halala. Amandla. Goeiedag. And thank you.